Going live, and we are live. Good day, everyone. I'll give a second till everyone kind of jumps in here, and then we will jump into questions and all that stuff. So, yeah, that's what I got right now. What up, Trace? How are you? See you putting the boy to work in the backyard on Instagram. What's up? Got the book this week. Thanks, man. I'm glad. I'm interested to see what it does for you and all that good stuff. Rebecca, what's up? Da Vinci. That's a great. I think I really like that profile picture. It's very interesting. There's a artist that Rogan was talking about the other day that reminds me of. What up, Chris? So cool. Hear it all. Here comes the flood. Here comes all the folks that look. It's the gang, man. We're all on here together every Sunday. Sorry, I wasn't on here last week, and I meant to make an announcement about it, and I really just forgot. It was Mother's Day, and so we spent the day celebrating my wife, who doesn't really want to be celebrated. If we're honest about it, she just wants peace and quiet. That's all she wants.
I really hate. It's really funny. I hate birthdays. I hate Mother's Day. Like anything that has to do to like celebrate or spotlight me. It's just like not my jam. Like I just don't feel comfortable with. I love and appreciate.
You're the hidden figure.
I am. I like to stay in the background, which is why I'm off to the side and not in front of the camera.
So but we went down the shore, and because if you live in Jersey, you call it down the shore, and so we just went and like walked on the beach, which was like basically deserted, and found horseshoe crabs and seashells, and then brought them home. And now they are all living on my front porch. Right now on my front porch, there are hermit shell crabs. There's a horseshoe crab shell, and there's an enormous turtle shell. There are a lot of carcasses.
Wait, and a complete like exoskeleton of a crab. Like,
oh yeah,
it's like perfectly intact. We found it perfectly intact, which is awesome. So now it's in a specimen jar.
Did you see that movie, The Bone Collector? That's how I'm starting to feel.
That's what Marley's like.
I'm starting to feel like it's the Mutter Museum in Philly. It's like, oddities of science that are crowding my house. So cool. So before we jump into this, so let's just jump into this. I'll do my little preamble thing for the new people, and then we'll just jump right into it. So everyone, welcome. This is Sunday Night Teacher Talk, which is at 1:00 p.m. Eastern time. So not really night, but time is irrelevant these days, because before I know it, it's 8:00 and whatever. So my name is CJ Reynolds. I run this YouTube channel. We're also on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, and there's a book called Teach Your Class Off that you can get. So we're trying to hit all the markets. And why? Because we think that these conversations are important. We think that there is value in meeting as educators and having dialogue about what's going on in the classroom, because a lot of times you can feel alienated about a number of things. And so we meet together every Sunday to kind of talk about that. And it's, when I say meet, it's not just me. It's so on my computer, it's all these folks that are here on the side, and we show up to help you answer your questions and to create this community that we feel is really important and empowering to teachers. So all you have to do is put your question in on the side. There are no questions that are off, that are off limits. I'll talk about anything, but it does help if you write question or the letter Q beforehand, because that's just going to signify that you wrote a question. Now, if you don't do that, we'll hopefully see it anyway, but it just helps, the not so secret wife kind of handle things on here. And that's it, right?
Yeah. Cool.
So whatever you got, I'm on it. Is that Alicia Ray in there?
Yeah.
I see you, girl.
And someone from Ron Clark.
Alicia Ray is my buddy. Someone from Ron Clark?
Mm-hmm.
Ron Clark's a fascinating individual.
Beautiful eye and eyebrow picture.
I really like profile pictures.
They're interesting.
I feel like I always comment on them.
Mm-hmm.
So look, while my wife is pulling up the first question, I thought about, and I was going to bring the book in here. I thought about, like, I've been reading, and I've been reading a lot and listening to a lot of podcasts lately. And so my favorite new podcast is, there's only one episode, is the Darius Daniels podcast. So that's worth checking out. And then I've been listening to a lot of stuff on mindset, and there was a really interesting podcast I was listening to yesterday, and I'm going to forget who it was because I have to right now. But it was the Tim Ferriss podcast, and they were talking about psychedelics, which is something that I'm very, very interested in, something I've never tried before. But I'm very interested in this idea that through using psychedelics and using therapy, that folks are getting like literally cured from things like PTSD and lifelong struggles with depression. And when I have so many students that I'm often helping to sort of like manage some of that stuff, I just think that's fascinating. It's an interesting conversation. And so the book that I'm reading this week is going to be part of a book club that I'm doing with a bunch of other, it's like I think it's basically people from YouTube and Instagram. Are you going to grab it? To start having conversations about race. And so especially race as teachers, and like, what does that look like to be a Black educator in a classroom with students that either look like you or don't look like you, or being a white educator in a classroom with people that look like you or don't look like you, or come from the same background, or share the same views. And so we're reading Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria? And so it's pretty meaty. So we're going to like break this down in chunks, and then we'll talk about it each week. So and then each week, so this is going to be like ongoing things. It's part of a book club, but then I'm reading different books each week to kind of like just feed my mind during this time. Because again, I'm really excited about like the idea of like when the world opens back up, what is your new normal? What are you coming out of this looking like before? Like, I don't want to go back to the world or to school being the same individual that I was when I left. I want to be stronger, better, more excited about what I'm getting into. What you got there, dude? All right. Timmy is asking, what is the graphic on your shirt? Oh, so like, Old Navy made all these shirts, man. It is, it says digging in the crates. And so they have like all these like old throwback hip hop shirts that I don't think anybody was buying because they were selling them for like $5. So I just bought a whole bunch of them. So I was talking about one of the things I love about this idea of digging in the crates is I love this idea from hip hop culture that we are, or from music in general, but especially in hip hop, where there's always this, it is when you dig in crates and you look for records, DJs held those records close to their heart. They didn't want everyone to know where their samples were coming from because they didn't want anyone else to steal it. So it took listening to all kinds of music, right? Whether it was rock or soul or jazz or Afro-Cuban, and then taking elements of that, looking for breaks in that, and then using that in the music. And I think that as educators, we're always digging in the crates. We're always looking for influences in pop culture, in art, in music, in video games, on YouTube, in history, that we're trying to find little nuggets that are going to build engagement in our classes, build bridges for our students. And I love that idea. So aside from the fact that I just, am a fan of hip hop and that's one piece, but that idea of digging in the crates is like, no, what are we doing? Like right now, I feel like that's what this is, right? Like we're like this community of educators that are trying to like look through each other's record collection to see like, what idea you have for this? What's going on with this? And so I love that idea. Piano Boy is asking, first year teacher, what suggestions do you have for balancing a social life outside of teaching, meeting, curriculum planning, etc.? See, isn't it so funny that this question came up? So that's really funny because we were just in that podcast that I referenced. This was spoken about in there, and I was saying how I've never done a video on work. No, that's not true. I did a video on finding balance. And so the creator of the podcast I was listening to, this guy Darius Daniels, was saying that life is sort of like a seesaw. So those of you that are old enough remember seesaws, like you would sit on this thing and one person sits on one side, one sits on the other side, and you balance back and forth, right? But if you're on there by yourself, life can often feel like a seesaw where you are trying to constantly recalibrate, rebalance, repivot so that you can find some sort of equilibrium, but it's impossible to hold it there forever. And I liken work-life balance to spinning plates all the time, right? You're the plates never stop, right? So there's always plates that are spinning, but it is how many plates do you want to spin, right? Like, so maybe you're a person that lives a very simple lifestyle and you have 2 plates and you're single and you work and you come home and you're like, you're content like that, right? There are those of us that I like having, sometimes I don't love it, but for the most part, I feel the most complete and excited about life and impassioned when I have like 12 things going on at once. And so sometimes I see that plate of my relationship with my wife is getting a little wobbly. It's slowing down. I got to pivot, go over there and start spinning that plate. Then I see something with my kids, something with my friends, my own interior work that I need to be doing, something with school, writing something new, putting out a YouTube video, connecting with people online. Like, there are all of these different plates that are going on. And so it is constantly figuring out which one. It's being able to monitor what you have going on and seeing where your attention is needed. And I think that that's how you create work-life balance. I don't think that you're ever, unless you have like telekinesis, you can't just sit back and be like, this will all work out, because with my brain, I'm going to move these plates equally at all times. But you can't, because when I'm with my wife and I'm present, meaning I'm not on my phone, I'm not watching TV, I'm not, unless that's the activity that we've decided to engage in, I'm not like working out, like I'm with my wife or I'm with my kids. I heard on a podcast recently, this guy, Jesse Itzler, said, be where your feet are. And so wherever you are at the moment, that's where you are. And I just think when we focus in on something, I realize I'm going long on this. I'll finish up. I realize that when we are focused 100% on something, then we get a lot more done, right? I'm always quoting Ron Swanson, who said, don't half-ass anything, whole-ass everything. Get your whole ass into what you're doing. And so if I'm doing yard work, I'm just doing yard work. And if I'm running, I'm just running. I'm not running and texting people at the same time or trying to do a phone call on headphones. It's like, nah, bro, I also can't multitask at all.
No.
So thanks for
affirming
that.
But I think for him, for a first year teacher, like a good note to would be that, like, yeah, first year, like your first few years in education, that plate needs a lot of attention and a lot of spilling, because you're building something, you're building your craft.
It becomes saying no to a lot of other things. Opportunities. When the school wants you to chaperone, coach, go on, lead a club, it's like being able to say no so that you can do things well that you're doing, because then you get good at just teaching. You get good at showing up and making,
and that's
sprinkle magic. So like, I just think that's the move. Stephanie Henry question: what advice do you have for teaching students that have had emotional trauma? My student has had a terrible time with focus and recall retention and has been through a lot. I think, look, this is a really great question in terms of, especially right now that, it's difficult now, right? So my answer for now, while most of us are still in quarantine, is going to be different than if we were in school. Because right now I can call someone and it's harder to read. I can't see their body language. I can't see how they're holding themselves. I can't see how they're interacting with others. I can't see how they walk down the hallway. These are all clues that I pull on all the time to be able to really know what's going on with the kid. So if I go, yo, you good? And then they're like, yeah, I'm good. It's like, are you really? Or did I see you get into like a pretty tough like play fight at the end of the hallway, or get into it with a teacher or an educator that asks you to like tuck your shirt in or take your hat off or something like that, and like your response to that was a little bit explosive. And so I can't see that right now. My answer is always, your attention is better than your advice, right? Your attention is always more important than your advice. So for right now, it's been just calling kids, and when they don't answer, I just text them or I just leave a nice message. And just saying like, yo, it's rarely about school stuff. Typically kids bring up school stuff, but I'm just like, what's going on? What have you been doing? This is what I've been doing. This is something that like, I miss about school, or I really miss you. Like I'm sorry our year got cut off. It's letting kids know that you care, and then just being there to listen to whatever they have to say, and then just honoring that, right? it is going through it with someone, not leading someone through something. That's like, I think that's the wrong play. So we're not healing anyone. We're not doing anything to save anyone. We're not doing anything that is fixing anyone. It is, and this is a lesson that I've learned from being married for so long, is that so often my wife doesn't want my advice. My wife just wants me to listen to her and to hear what's going on. I like that I used my sincere voice there and you're laughing on the side.
It's really the truth.
It's the truth, right? Word.
Which is so funny because you give advice to like so many people, but I'm always like, I don't want your advice.
Yeah.
I just want you to listen to me.
Yeah. And so but the important thing there is knowing someone's, what we refer to as like your love language, right? It's like, what do you need? And then, but everyone wants attention. Like they just don't want to tell you about it. So, and then in terms of trauma, it's getting kids to talk about it. It's getting kids to know that their feelings are okay. It's getting kids to know that they can do something with that mad, with that sad that they feel inside, which is why I put that Mr. Rogers song in my book, because I just think that that's so impactful, because feeling is healing. And when we allow ourselves to feel things, then we are kind of putting it out there so that we can heal instead of just keeping it all inside. Rebecca Wood is asking, I love the way I say people, it just seems so ridiculous all the time. Rebecca Wood is asking, have you ever done interdisciplinary reading? I teach history, but I want to incorporate novels into my class. So should I go alone or try to get English teachers on board? So look, Rebecca, I have wanted to partner with other teachers forever. It's just that any number of things get in the way, right? One is schedules don't match up in the curriculum. Two is people just leave our school and like, we just don't, there's like, oftentimes it's like, is someone really going to stay? Like, do I want to put the work into creating this curriculum with you? That is something that we've created that we feel excited about. And then next year you leave and now someone new comes in and it's like, can they fill the role like the way that you did? Like, are they going to get excited about something that we created together, or do I have to like recreate the wheel again? I have done interdisciplinary stuff. So when we read, geez, what the heck is that? Oh, Night by Wiesel. I'm gonna forget his first name. Anyway, I'm sure people are saying it out loud. It is that coupled with you have to learn history, right? You have to learn about, there's certain things about the Holocaust, about culture, about what's up? Elie Wiesel, yes. So it is. Thank you, thanks, John. John Lopez, always there with the same. So it is. There has to be a level of base knowledge that students have so that they can connect it, so that it's not. And then it's. I think it's taking it a next step forward and saying, how can we see this now? Like what systems are in place that still seem oppressive, that still seem like they are singling people out. And so for us, that connection piece was criminal justice system. And so we visited like an old prison in Philadelphia and talked about like what it would be like to be in here and what this would be like for prisoners in concentration camps, and not drawing too close of a comparison to that, right? Like I don't want to, the idea isn't to like really compare two things and say these are equal, but it's having the conversation about that. And then in reading things like Persepolis, which is a graphic novel about the Iranian Revolution, that is like, there's all kinds of base knowledge and all kinds of good stuff that you can pull into that as well. In the past, V for Vendetta, and just about everything. I mean, like Lord of the Flies, like reading Fahrenheit 451, you have to study some of that history of like, well, what was it like when TV showed up? What was it like when consumerism like exploded and was this thing that there were advertisements everywhere? It's digging into some of that stuff. And I think it's really fun. So if you can't find someone in your school to partner with, I think go to the outside world. Like find someone that has been caught up in the criminal justice system, that's been a soldier, that has lived in a country under actual like real oppression, and bringing those experts into the building to speak to the students, because they're going to do it on a level and with an authenticity that we often don't have, which is one of my favorite things about my hip hop classes. Like that I can have this community that I can draw on that comes in and talks about, African dance and African drumming and the history of DJing and any number of other things, Black culture, like living in the city, growing up in the South, like whatever place we're kind of talking about. So we don't just listen to Nelly, but we bring in someone that can speak to like, yeah, well, this is what he's talking about because this is what it's like to live in St. Louis in this time period. And that's everything. It's one of those long answer days. I can feel it.
It's always that.
Laylee Monroe is asking, Colorado is cutting ed funding and talking about layoffs. Also hybrid learning next year. What are other states planning for? I'm worried about getting a job as a first-year teacher. So
what's hybrid learning?
I think I'm going to make a guess here, but hybrid learning, you're talking about doing like some at home and some in school. Look, I saw a real interesting, and maybe they were speaking to this. I follow hashtag hip hop ed on Instagram, and there was a picture today of a number of individuals, looked like all white men, shaved heads with barcodes on the backs of their necks, and it said something to the effect of like educating the masses online is cheaper, or it's something to that effect, right? I don't even have time to look it up right now, but but I'm feeling like that could be speaking to is this idea that it is cheaper and easier. We don't need buildings, we don't need lunches, we don't need to pay teachers like overtime or extra, deal with like the union pull. Like there's so many things that would just go away if we could just teach kids online. But I think what we're doing there is we are not serving children the way that they need to be served. I think that if there's one huge takeaway, or one of the many takeaways in what we've learned through distance learning, is that teachers are actual professionals, right? Like that we've studied, we've tried to get better, we've crafted lessons and built relationships and done a lot of heavy lifting to be able to serve the communities in which we are in, or to partner or to work with the communities in which we work. And when we're not able to do that on a person-to-person level, it's like it diminishes the work, and I think it further creates a further gap for students that don't have, like when equity is really not a thing and kids don't have internet and access and homes on a safe space, like, or when you are not creating a space for students to show up and learn and get cared for and be fed mind, body, and spirit, then we are furthering the gap between the haves and the have-nots when we do that. And I think that that's a dangerous space to get into. So Philadelphia has not talked about that on any level that I am aware of, but it's certainly disconcerting to me. And yeah, so that I can't speak for any other state, but New Jersey and Philadelphia or Pennsylvania, I have not heard that conversation come up.
I can't find that post.
I'm going to repost that post. So I'll repost that on my Instagram as soon as I'm done here. So if anyone's interested in seeing what I'm talking about, or and maybe I have it wrong, but that's how I'm perceiving the thing. That's the beauty of art, is that you can perceive it any way that you want. Anna Ballerina is asking, what is your advice for helping students with ADHD or dyslexia? I find lots of resources for elementary, but few for high school level. And I think, there's so much to say about this, but if I was even to give like a few quick ideas, one is helping students know that no matter who they are or how they learn, that they are fine just the way that they are. They are not broken. There's nothing wrong with them, but it is in fact just that school has been created for one type of child. And so when we don't take into account the dyslexics, the kids with ADD, the kids with processing disorders, the kids with dysgraphia, dyscalculia, or any number of other learning differences, and I really want to make that word stand out, because it is not learning disabilities necessarily. It is that you learn a different way, that you are more tactile and sitting in a row with a worksheet and told to speak when spoken to, and then as Anis Mojgani says, and then are never spoken to. there's a problem with that. And so we need to create spaces in our schools where those kids are celebrated and given an opportunity to win, no matter what their learning style is. And so in our classroom, one of the ways I try and do that is, one is dyslexia. I give kids audiobooks, right? So in speaking to experts on this, because I'm certainly not an expert on dyslexia, even though I'm fairly certain that I have dyslexia and it's just never been identified. And my kids deal with it. That's something that they are working through also. I think that, so what I've learned is that it is listening to a book and maybe following along, and maybe just listening to it is doing a lot of the same things that reading a book is doing, right? It is growing your vocabulary. It is helping you to become a more fluid reader. So if you're reading along with something and listening to it, you're hearing that fluidity. You're hearing the cadence in someone's voice. You're hearing how they will, say certain things in such a way that is like, they're not just reading like this the whole time, like the guy from, Ferris Bueller, or any number of students in your class that don't want to read the book that you're reading. They're getting excited about it. And I just think that makes it really fun as well, right? You're putting in enjoyment into education. And so the other piece of that, with regards to kids that are dealing with like something like ADHD, it is creating spaces and places in your classroom that have them in mind. Mm-hmm. So I often get told, whenever I post pictures of my classroom recently, I get a lot of people that are like, oh, it must be nice to not have big classes. And it's like, oh, I have big classes. I have 25 to 30 kids in a class. But what they see though is the number of desks that I have in my room, because slowly over time, I will like look out in the hallway. If I feel like there's a desk that's not being used, I just get rid of it. I'll put it at the end of the hallway or down some corridor where I just am like, I don't really know what to do with this. I don't want to tell anyone I'm getting rid of it. So I just make it disappear. And then it's, someone else's issue, or like, I don't know, maintenance puts it in the locker with the extra desks or whatever the hell they do with them. But what I want to do is create spaces where students feel comfortable sitting. So I have a number of stand-up desks. If you notice in the back of my room, these large wooden crates or old lab tables that I have like put on essentially on 4x4 so that kids can stand up and can move around. There's like a little bit of movement area there. They have stools. They can sit on the windowsills. They can sit at the couch. I have another lab table that turned into a coffee table so kids can sit on the ground. Kids can lay on the floor. And so it moves into this space of like flexible seating that is designed with all types of students in mind. And that changes from year to year because the needs of one particular student. So I might have a student as ADHD that does very well standing up. They're good now. I might have another kid that lays on the floor and they might roll around a little bit and stuff like that. But if I go, bro, you listen to what I'm saying? Yeah, Reynolds, I got you. What's the last thing I said? You said this. Okay. Because, sometimes doing this doesn't look like you're paying attention, but then I love that I have this new chair, is what we think of as paying attention is not paying attention, right? Like people can do other things while they're doing it. So it's just trying to create spaces in your classroom for students to find that ability to do the best that they can.
I added the Sped on a Budget video in the comments if anyone's interested.
That's a great video.
I just want to say something about the dyslexia in high school.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I just think that so much of dyslexia research focuses on young. Like the younger you can get children, their brains are more malleable. You can write those kind of like pathways to learning, which is essentially like what dyslexia programs are doing for children.
Yeah.
I think if that's unmet in an elementary level, it's really hard. There's not a focus on it in high school.
No, because what's focused on is learning how to deal with it now instead of learning a different way.
Yeah.
And there's tons of people that have been successful in doing that. Someone I might steer you towards is Jim Quick, KWIK, has done some really great work around this. And it's just a really interesting individual. So you can look him up on Instagram or on his website or whatever, but he just puts out really good work, or look him up on any number of podcasts that he's been on because he's really interesting guy in that space. Love Happiness is that's a great name. As a man without children, I often feel my advice has low standing when speaking to parents and thoughts. So look, I would say or speaking to parents, thoughts. That is great insight, right? Because let's break this down. I'm going to go both sides. One, before I had kids, I had this idea of what I thought having kids was going to be like, and what kind of parent I thought it was going to be like. I was the guy in the grocery store that would see some small child in a cart, like tuned into an iPad, and be like, "Can't believe it! They can't even go to the grocery store without putting their kid on the iPad." I mean, come on, like, learn to parent, have a conversation with your kid, teach him about math, be together, like, be in the moment right now. And that was me. Like, I was a total jackass about it. And then when I had kids and I realized that they didn't want to be in the grocery store, that no matter what I was talking about, because I was trying to focus on where was the product and how can I get out of here fast enough, and I'm navigating through aisles, I'm trying to get around people, and what am I going to make this week, and all the other things that are running around in my head trying to be in this space and get out of here, is that I didn't have time to also appease my child, to converse with my child. Like, I don't even have, if my wife and I go food shopping, we're not like talking business. We're not talking school or life. We're talking.
Wait, let's clarify. When we do go grocery shopping, you want to, and it drives me. I like feel like the parent. I want to put you on an iPad because then I can't focus on what I'm trying to get. But to my downfall, I don't write a list. I just know what I know, and I go in and I get it. And
what else do I do at the grocery store?
To write a list. You pick up weird, random
I enjoy picking up weird stuff and putting it in the cart. I enjoy finding things at Target that are large and absurd and carrying those around like I plan on buying them. I dance a lot. I sing all the songs that are on in the stores to my wife. The worse, the better. So it's like
it's like grocery shopping.
If there's like some
toddler.
Christopher Cross on, I mean, it's game on right now. So yeah, you're right. So it's like you're trying to find something to tune kids in. That being said, you were a kid once. You were someone's child. You grew up. You are an educated individual. And I think there's something to say about that. I think sometimes it is owning what we might not know, but saying, look, I don't have any children, so I can't, I can't always say things for certain, but that's like, I don't know any number of things about my students and what it was like in their particular shoes to come up, whether it was their race, their religion, their sexual orientation, their parenting situation that happens at home, growing up in foster care, growing up as an adopted child. I can't speak to any of that because I haven't been through it. And I've never walked in those shoes. But if I can acknowledge that, then it becomes a place of, I'm not trying to say I'm the authority. I'm trying to say that I realize I don't have children and I never have. But in growing up, I was this kind of kid in school. I had this sort of difficulty in school. I had a friend that dealt with this particular issue. I've worked with other students, and this is a commonality that I see that helps those sort of students, like kids that are not turning in work, kids that are having a hard time being seated in class. This is what I've seen work, or you flip it. And I think that not enough teachers do this. You say to the parent, is there anything I should know about your student that would help me to help them be more successful in school? That right there is the line, because it is acknowledging that you don't know everything about this child, but the parent has known that child their whole lives. They carry them inside of them, or they've adopted them since they were a little kid, or they live with them all the time, or whatever the story is. You are acknowledging what they know. And I think that is the move in terms of helping students grow. Like, so the bottom line is what you communicate to parents is two things. One, I only want your kid to be successful. It's the only thing that I care about, right? Two, I realize that you know more than me. So can we collaborate and try and come up with something that's going to work the best for your kid? And I think that wins every single time. And by winning, I mean, it helps the kid, right? If education's only ever about students, then that's what that conversation is based on, and not, because I used to get caught up in like being right, or like, oh, this parent's going to come in and they don't even know this about their child. And it's like, dude, they already know. They've been told by 8 other teachers today. They've been told by every teacher before you that this is a problem, or where their child lacks. It's like, hey, we're noticing this. How can we partner to help your child? And then that parent feels like they have an advocate. They feel like they have an ally in the situation and not someone that's just trying to get them or point out their shortcomings. Because damn it, man, when you're a parent, you already feel that all the time, every day anyway, is how you're just not good enough, or like, what the hell are we getting this for?
Oh,
What do you have kids for? We didn't know what we were doing.
Sometimes
we
I
saw
question
other people with
myself.
kids and we thought that looked like a good idea. Just like when we got the dog and that. I couldn't stand having the dog, but now he's my best friend in the whole world and I love my children. So, all right. Catherine Johnson is asking, in an ideal world, what would you see as a good solution to next year if we can't fully go back? I'm going to be on a committee for my school and I'm looking for ideas. Catherine, that's such a great question. What would I want for my students next year? I think that we need to make it an absolute priority that all students are at least starting at a space where technology is equal, where there's enough internet, there's enough computers. And look, I get it that, I hear people talking about that, well, that's the family's problem. Why don't they have they should have computers for their kids. But when you're at school and you're doing one-to-one, kids don't all have computers. When I roll the computer card in, it's because not everyone's got a device. There's reasons I can't do things when everyone's on a cellular device in one class. I can't do that with all classes because I realize that not everyone has a cell phone in every class. So I think it is trying to create equity in terms of technology, right, from the jump, making sure that someone's internet's not that they just have it, but that it's strong enough. I think as a country, we've forgotten largely that some people still have dial-up internet. Like that's a real thing that still exists. Like you can't just tap into the Wi-Fi because you live in the middle of nowhere, because your parents are farmers or they live on a reservation or something like that, and that is not something that exists. The other thing I think is, I keep going back to this, but my friend Adam Welcome said this idea of trimming the fat. It is taking these giant ideas of what we think school should look like, of the 50-minute or block classes, that all the stuff that we need to drill into students, and saying, what's actually essential here? And the question that I love, that is, there's a I think this is where it comes from. This guy, it's not Peter Attia, it's whoever started the SpaceX program. One of the questions that they often ask is, they'll come up with these huge ideas, right? Like, how do we colonize Mars? How do we make fresh water accessible for everyone in the world? And one of the things that they talk about is, what would this look like if it were easy? And I love that question, because then what it's doing is shifting. It's making this giant, difficult, scary thing a different conversation. You're going, but what would this look like if it was actually easy? And when you start from there, it's like, well, everyone would have this and we'd have this. And you start looking at the needs of your community and how you can actually answer them without putting limitations on it. Because what that's allowing you to do, and my wife, I drive her crazy with this idea, is it allows you to dream. It allows you to take your imagination and start thinking of connection points that you wouldn't normally think of, right? You are becoming the A-team. You're MacGyvering that situation. And in that, I think that that's where a lot of creative solutions come out of. And I think that schools get stuck with coming up with creative solutions. They come up with political decisions, or they come up with policy changes or something like that, instead of thinking about the kid and learning and how do we make these things happen and have the teacher become the facilitator of that. Like that's the trifecta, right? So but how do we get from here to here? And I think it's cutting out a ton of other stuff. And so that we can put in that good work. The only other thing I'm really, really concerned about is social emotional well-being for students and how are we meeting those needs. And I don't necessarily have an answer for that, except for one-to-one phone calls and communicating with families, letting them know that you care and you're thinking about them and that you are there for their kid. But on a school-wide level, I don't really know what that looks like. Because I think as soon as we make those calls mandatory, then it becomes calm. Hey, Jordan, how are you? Is everything good? Okay. And it becomes like a checklist of talking points instead of like, yo, bro, what's going on? Like, what have you been up to? What are you watching on Netflix? Yeah, I love that show. What did you think when this happened on there? Or what do you think about this? Or, yo, did you see that new Fortnite update? Yeah, it was really tight the other night. And having those conversations, I just think that's it's more
looking and feeling, and they are noticing like the disconnect and almost like the depression kind of like that's coming on some children from not having that part of the
dude. I mean, I would, gosh, I mean, if I taught little ones,
right? Like that's our daughter.
If I taught in our neighborhood, I would like leave balloons out front of someone's house, or like just like tag up the front of their house with some sidewalk chalk real quick, and then you're just surprised by joy. And I think that is the piece that's reminding you. Because
it's hard to do
because you can't bring those
so
children together, right? It's impossible.
I know, but when you have so much other, right? Like when you're not able to trim the fat and you have all this laundry list of crap that you need to do, that gets put on, falls by the wayside, and it falls as not important. 100%. And it's really important.
Because I mean, like we've talked about this ad nauseum in our house, is my level of work that I've been doing now compared to when I'm in school. It's so much more. Because it's documenting everything. It's, did you call a kid? Did you fill out the 8 different things on the Google slide for every single one? And who'd you call and why'd you call them and where'd you call them and what number did you use and did you communicate with them and what did you communicate with them about? It's like, oh my God, it makes me not want to call anybody. Or I just call people and I just don't fill the thing in because it's like, because I could have called 3 more kids in the time I filled out the spreadsheet.
Wait, Above the Grave said, my kids asked if we could continue Zoom calls through the summer.
Yeah, because they just want to connect. I want to call kids all summer too. And it kills me that I haven't been able to talk to everyone yet because I just want to, it literally is the best part of my day in school anyway, when I just get to call kids and say, yo man, what's up? And you hear them and they're like, Reynolds, because they're stoked that they're like, damn, like we're really talking. And it's like, I miss you. I want to like, just know what you're up to. I want to, because we were tight all year or for 4 years or whatever. And now, now I don't see you. And that kills me. I'm not crying. I just have something in my eye. I mean, I cry a lot, but not this time. Jace Schmidt. Jace, I have never seen that name in my life.
I actually was thinking that also and how much I like that name.
Fantastic. I love it. How do you approach administration that does not support you when parents question your teaching style and classroom and behavior management? Oh, I know this one. How do you help everyone work as a team instead? Jason, look, there's only so much you can do. So the way I deal with this is I've had both. I've had students that have been awful to one another in class. And so like I once had a student that was that this is years and years and years ago, that was low key threatening like one of my students that was just a lot different than everyone else. He didn't really talk. He was very, very quiet. He was very, very shy. He would eat lunch in my room every day, and he would make paper dolls every day in my room and puppets out of them. And then he would get really kind of excited, but like low key, like show them to me and be excited about them. We would talk about it and stuff like that. But no sense of being able to like stand up for himself or voice his opinion. Didn't want to share in class, but would share with me after class and say, I didn't want to say in front of the class today, but like this is what I was thinking or feeling about something. I found out a student was like threatening him. Like saying awful things to him. So I tried to talk to that kid about it. It escalated. The student that was doing the threatening like exploded, went home, told his mom that I was doing whatever or handling it however. But I did tell that student that you're not welcome in our class unless we can get through this. So like whether it's with me or whether it's we're going to communicate with at home or with other partners that we have in the school, because having you two in the same space, it's just being antagonistic every single day, and that's just not going to happen. So like if you show up and you're cool and we can live, awesome. But otherwise, we're just gonna we're gonna have to figure out another scenario to be successful with this. And I got thrown under the bus. Like the parent came in, took the kid's side, told administration, and in the meeting, the administrator goes, well, why did you do that to him, Reynolds? Why did you say this? Why didn't you do this? And it's like, bro, for like all of a sudden this is on me, and it was extremely unfair. And I've had any number of times that's happened. But then I've had administrators like someone, my CEO at my school, who's like literally one of the greatest human beings I've ever known, that dude backs you no matter what. You might still have a talk afterwards, something might happen afterwards, but he is always about supporting teachers because he wants reconciliation. That's his thing. It's not about winning or losing, it's about reconciling. So what do you do when you don't feel supported? I think one, you speak truth to power, right? So like you talk to administrators, if that's, you know, even something they're willing to have a conversation about. It's like saying, hey, look, I feel really unsupported and I'm wondering, like, what is kind of the game plan when I'm coming into this? Like, so get a sense of like who they are and what they're about. If you feel like you don't have an ally in that position, I think you have a couple of decisions. One is, do you want to work at that school anymore? Because I think that, you know, teachers are really important, but administration definitely sets the tone. And if you're in a space where you don't feel like leadership, if whoever is the captain of your ship, bro, like they're going to decide so many different things that it doesn't matter if you and the crew are all on the same page. The captain might just be taking your ship to a different place than where you really want to go. The other thing is finding allies in the school. Finding, you know, so when I've in times when I felt like I haven't connected with certain members of administration, but do I connect with the assistant principal or the grade level dean or the department chair or the whoever's in charge of you know, that particular grade, or the social worker or other teachers. And so you are creating connection points with other people so that I don't go to administration, or at least to certain members of administration when I have a particular issue. I'm instead going to the people that I know and trust and that are on this journey with me. And that's who I'm drawing my help from, so that it doesn't become a space where I have to trust no matter what the policy says. It's like, nope, we'll figure out another way. So I'd say that, like, oftentimes instead of just kicking a kid out or like calling the principal or assistant principal, one of my main allies is my friend, Mr. Meeks, that teaches at my school. He's been in a bunch of videos with me before. And Meeks and he has this incredible ability to communicate with students. So it's almost like a translator. Like, this is what I'm trying to get them to understand. And Meeks he breaks it down in a way that they understand it. And so he's been such an important and incredible ally to me in school, because we are people that, like, we work as a team together to do that. And I think if you can find someone like that, it can make an incredible difference. Annabelle Arena is asking, how do you know when you found the right school for you? What kinds of variables are good to look into? So, and I would say I'm really intuitive person. So so I don't really talk about this very often, but the neighborhood in which we live is just outside of Philadelphia. And we had this idea that initially we all were going to move to Camden, New Jersey, which is predominantly Black and Hispanic neighborhood, right? And instead of moving there, because what we wanted to do was like be good neighbors, right? We wanted to find space that needed good neighbors and be good neighbors. And then we thought, well, let's move a step out of that. So we live in a town now that is historically racist and predominantly white. And so to the point where, like, there's a million stories I could talk about this, but the idea that we had was, how do we bridge the gap between these two communities? So it was us and two other families moved to this neighborhood. And then now there's about 50 of us that live in the same neighborhood. And it's been doing things like being a part of the board meetings at the school, being coaches on teams, and just being kind and loving individuals in the community, helping to create a community garden, with this idea that if everyone sweeps in front of their own house, then the whole neighborhood and the whole world's clean, right? And so it is taking care of vacant properties on the street so that they don't get like vandalized and stuff like that. And so that's the idea behind that. But when we moved to this neighborhood, there didn't take a lot of digging. I literally remember coming down like several blocks from me, coming into the neighborhood. I've never driven in here before in my life, and just knowing instinctively that this is where I needed to be. I knew in both schools that I went into that I knew in the moment that this is where I was supposed to be. When I married my wife, when I decided to have kids, when I decided that teaching was the move for me, when I decided to start doing YouTube, like all these things are like literally, I have these moments of clarity where it's like, yeah, I can see myself here. Like this is what I'm to do. So I'd say also, do you see yourself working in that community? And I think the important question, want them to be. Everyone's had that friend where you just saw the good in them. You saw how great they were. You saw how wonderful they would be. But then as time went on and the truth revealed itself, and they burned you, or you became not friends, or just because he cheated on his wife doesn't mean he's going to cheat on you, kind of an idea, right? But it's like, dude, if you look back, you go, damn, all the signs were there. I just wanted it to be something better. I think that's one of those things. So it's like, do they have programs? Do they care about kids? Do they care about their teachers? Like, how are they connecting with the community? Those are the things that I'm looking for to see if this is actually a good fit. But for me, it's like this intuitive, like, can I see myself here? And then just knowing right off the bat, because I'm looking at things for exactly where they are. If things never got better at that school, could you see yourself staying there? And I think that's a good indicator. I just answered that question. Did you have one underneath of it that I missed?
Oh, sorry.
It's all right. I'll use this time to get a drink of water real quick, which Edie thinks we should edit out.
She's laughing at you now.
I know. I love you, Edie. Skyline Little is asking, what do you think about technology being used for teaching? I think it has its space. I have two ideas about this. One is that we often use technology in the same way that we're using all the other stuff that's boring in school. Like, so we'll give kids a worksheet on an iPad, but it's the same thing as the worksheet. But now we're using technology in class. I think if technology is used as a tool, as a way to elevate, engage, inspire, motivate, and teach kids, it's awesome. But if we're using it as a babysitter, as a way to get out of creating lesson plans, as a way to put the learning and the responsibility off on someone else, then I think that's being used wrong. However, that being said, I see your profile picture as Minecraft character. My son, if given the opportunity to learn like any number of things, from like math to geography through the lens of Fortnite, like, dude, like that would be next level. Especially if we're talking about like Minecraft in terms of like survival, right? So like in survival mode, I'm always amazed at the amount of stuff that my children who are, students I created, they in survival mode, when they know like, all right, so I have to make a crafting table, but I need these ingredients to make the crafting table. And then when I have the crafting table, I need to get these different elements and I put them together and it makes this thing, is the jumping off point for so much great stuff in education. And instead, they were just never taught like that. So if students have an aptitude for that, or they have an interest in that, or they have a love for technology, for coding, for Minecraft, for whatever it is, then using that as a tool to teach them the things that you need them to know about, I think it is friggin' the greatest idea. Because what it's literally doing is telling students, I see you, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to help you become the fullest and greatest version of yourself and to give you all the opportunity in the world. Mr. James Pete is asking, question, more like story time. I love story times. What one story about working?
Your answer is going to be this story time.
Oh, today, that's how I'm feeling, James. What's the story about working with a teammate that was Kim said and made your job not easier, but opened up the door for you?
Let's put him on the spot.
Mm-hmm. What do you think?
I don't know.
Opened up a door for me. I would say it's a great question, man. Who has sort of unlocked something in me? I would say, I'm going to talk about, and you can go check this guy out too, and this is not a plug, I'm not associated with them in any way. I had a friend, Nick Pascal. And Nick was white guy, grew up in an Italian family in New York, in the Bronx. I think he's from the Bronx. And so his dad died when he was younger, and then he got into education, ended up working at the same school that I'm working at now. We were at the same church for years and years and years. And Nick is this dude that is, he is incredibly kind on a level and forgiving that I had not. I don't know many people that that if they were like that, it didn't stand out to me. He was also sort of fearless that no conversation was going to be a conversation he wasn't willing to have with a family, with a student, or with someone that we worked with. But he did it in such a way with such tact that you never felt off put. You never felt like he was coming at you. It was like more like a dialogue than it was like dropping the mic. And so, and Nick owned who he was. He's really handsome dude. He really cares about his clothes, but he would wear these suits that were so tight that I remember Noah telling me that he used to split his pants all the time, because if he had to bend over to get something, he would split the ass in his pants because his clothes were so tight. And so Nick did an interview the other night with Todd Nessaloni on what is it? Is it hashtag Tell Your Story?
Yeah.
So if you go on
Todd Nessaloni's YouTube channel,
yeah, Todd Nessaloni, you just go on his YouTube channel, you can find this interview with Nick. And watching him, I once saw him teach a class that was in the dining hall of our school to 50 seniors, and they were silent, respectful, captivated. It was like, it just showed you, like, when you went back to your little class of 25 or 30, you were like, damn, I can't even get this under control. My man's teaching in the lunchroom while they're making lunch, while there's deliveries going on, 1,000 other things, and kids are sharing their heart. They're being engaged. They're working with one another. They're collaborating on stuff. And it just showed you, like, damn, like, I can't even do this in my own class. It just didn't make me feel bad. It just showed me what was possible. And the way that Nick connected with kids relationally was amazing to me. It was just like, he was just beloved by everyone, and it just showed me what was possible. And I think that really opened up a door to me to say, like, no, don't back down. Like, see things through and like have difficult conversations and love kids for who they are, and always, always, always forgive everyone. And it showed it. What it did was it showed me how to really unashamedly bring love into the game of teaching, and that was huge for me.
That's a great answer to that question.
Thanks, man. You never tell me that. I mean, sometimes afterwards you tell me, but like in the moment, it makes me feel good. Enjoy. I'm going to actually put that on Instagram too. I'm going to tell people they need to go on and check my guy out. Even though Nick doesn't have like an Instagram or anything like that.
No, he doesn't, but I put the link on.
Oh, okay, word. Enjoy Life is, people have like some really positive names today. I'm digging it. Hello, what's your best advice for distance learning parent connect conferences? So again, I don't think my view changes on that. We went against having parent conferences for this third trimester because we're just calling parents anyway all the time. And so the way we're doing that is we are communicating with everyone, kind of like took a chunk of parents. And so that sounds so ridiculous. It sounds like we're murdering people. We kind of broke it up into sections. And then I have my, 12 or 15 parents that I need to communicate with weekly. But then it's choose your own adventure, right? So like I can call as many parents or as kids as I want during the week, but it's making sure that those particular students are being communicated with and those families are being communicated with. So we did away with it. But I have a video about teacher conferences that I think it really speaks to this. And I think it goes back to that point that I made earlier. It's understanding the anxieties and the fears and the doubt that is in parents right now. It's asking what else is going on that you might need to know about so that it's going to help you make informed decisions when helping a child. Because there are some kids that have everything. They have the internet, they have the computer, they have the love, they have the food, and all that's there. And that's going to make you maybe make an informed decision about, well, this work isn't particularly good enough, or I want to see more from you in this, and this way. And then with students that their parents are gone all day, and now that kid is in charge of, that 10-year-old is in charge of taking care of the 3 or 4 little brothers or sisters, and they are making food during the day, and they're doing chores, and there's, not enough internet, or there's not enough quiet space to actually do work. Like, that's going to inform certain decisions that you're going to make as well. So I think finding out what's going on in homes and whether or not that parent has anything to share. It's not about like asking them poignant questions like, does your child have to care for their younger brothers and sisters during the day? But it's like asking, like, is there anything I should know about, or that you feel it would help me be a better teacher for them at this time? Like, what struggles is your kid going through at this time, and how might we, what do you have any ideas on how like we could make this better? Because again, I just think of my wife going into like IEP meetings for our kids before, and no one ever asked her what she thought. No one ever asked her what she thought was the move or what she should do or anything like that. And
no one ever asked me about my child, who I know incredibly better than everybody else.
And so I think that shows parents, one, that you really care, that you are all about love and you're about caring for their kid and helping their kid do the best, and really looking at the situation in a real way. And then, and so that I think those few things would really help in that situation. Break Pinoy? I don't know if I said that right. We're going with it. Break is asking, what advice can you give for an undergraduate student wanting to teach high school? I've talked about this a lot, but I think it's getting involved now. It's not waiting. When you want to be a carpenter, you don't wait to start like learning how to saw things and hammer nails in. Like, even if you're not a full-fledged carpenter, even if you're just in trade school, it's like doing that stuff all the time. You're always looking for opportunities to fix something, to help someone, to get some advice, to get some ideas. So I think coming to things like this, I think being a part of things like our Facebook group, Rap With Reynolds Teacher Talk, it's reading the books, it's listening to the podcast, but I think everything, all of that is just informing, helping you to become more aware, more strategic. It's doing a lot of stuff, but it's not putting you in front of students. So I think it's both end. I think it's learning as much as you can on your own as well as in school, but then finding out opportunities to get involved with children. So whether that's right now, like on an online platform, like VIP Kids or Dada ABC, or some sort of like online tutoring program, it's talking to schools and saying like, hey, can I help at your after school program? Or can I help like come in and observe or be an aide in a school or substitute teach or something along those lines? You're getting engaged with it. Because practicing your golf swing is great at home, but it's what's going to happen when you're out on the green and you're playing against other people. And so it's trying to put yourself in that space as much as possible to start honing those skills and seeing what that really feels like. Laura is asking, her profile picture looks like Storybird.
I know, it confused me it trips me up every single time I see it.
So Storybird is a company that we did a partnership with at one point, and they have really great platform online. Loved your last video. Thank you so much. What states are you and your daughter hoping to hit on your cross-country trek next year? Hint, Maine is beautiful in the summer. So I've been to Maine in the summer with my parents back in the day, and I loved it. So I think what we're hoping to do this time, so like, look, I'm hoping that this goes incredibly well. So for those of you that don't know, my daughter and I, this year we were planning, and I don't know that's going to happen now because of all that's going on with the pandemic, was to drive from where we live in New Jersey to California, and then have adventures the whole way, and then end that at Legoland, which is somewhere that my kids want to go. My son is not excited at all about driving across the country. So he and my wife are planning on flying there and meeting us when we're done, and then we could still have that.
Bertie and I are very similar. I also would not.
Mara and I cannot bathe for 3 weeks and sleep in the back of the car in a Walmart parking lot and be completely happy about it. So I think it's going to look like going from Jersey down to like Maryland, Virginia, and then essentially just making a right and going across Route 40. So that's like Tennessee. I forget how it lines up. Maybe Tennessee, Kentucky, Mississippi, Oklahoma, Texas, the Panhandle, and then down into New Mexico, which is where my mother-in-law lives, and then kind of swooping under New Mexico, hitting the Grand Canyon, and then heading like towards the Los Angeles area. And then I might drive back by myself. I'm not sure if my daughter wants to do that, but that might be a different route, might not, might just be get home quick. I don't really know. But then I'm hoping that spawns trips to like up to Maine, because I think that's a whole trip in and of itself, like Connecticut, New Hampshire, all of that kind of beauty together. Vermont into Maine is amazing. And then another trip like down south sometime, like all the way down to the Florida Keys is another one I've done. And I'm just excited to have someone with me, because I've done a lot of these trips alone, And so the first time I drove cross country, I did it all by myself. I was 22 years old, and nobody wanted to go with me. And so that's fun and exciting in and of itself. But it's just like, there's nothing like shared experience. Like to show up at the Grand Canyon and to look at it in all of its majesty and to just be alone is like, it's just like, this isn't like, I want to hug somebody or give a high five or experience this with somebody. And instead you're alone and you have no one. So hopefully Marley's digging it. She also wants to take the dog with us, which I don't think is going to happen. But
hold on, before you answer that, last one. Do that one first.
Okay, got you.
And then
Dawn Davis.
Mm-hmm, and then do
Got
that.
it. Dawn Davis, question 1. Would you consider partnering with a teacher to write a book for first-year new teachers? If you were open to it, would you prefer that this is shared with you? How would you prefer that this is shared with you? So I would. I thought so. Adam Welcome, my friend, writes a lot of books with other people, and so I think that that's really interesting idea. I think it would have to be someone that you really see eye to eye with, you really gel with, because I think that anytime I've ever partnered with anyone in anything, whether it was a band or a company or a video, it's you get to this point where there's going to be like some, like you're seeing things a little bit of a different way, and then being able to work through that together. But that would be exciting to me. And if someone was interested in that, it's just reaching out. Like, a lot of my DMs and emails are viewed before I get them these days, because I just can't get to all of them. I get so much of it right now, and there's only one me to create content and do things that I need to do. But any of that stuff is like either my wife sees it or my helper Edie sees it, and she gets stuff to me. I saw that said question 1, but I didn't see a question 2, and my wife just walked away from me. So I might go back to that. But I apologize for not being able to read the name, but it is 100% Freedom Fighters, LOL, but I have zero idea how to say that first name because I can't pronounce people's names usually. Question is, if a kid had an awkward history question, should I just lie and tell him the story or narrative, or admit that the issue is a hoax? If a kid had an awkward history question. So I think honesty is, honesty is the best policy, but I really think that it is, man. I think that there have been any number of times in class where I just thought that something like in history was just like, you're getting lied to. Like, you grew up with a lie. And so maybe it's not even saying you're being lied to. It's, look, there are other scholars that would say this. There are, those of us that grew up thinking that Christopher Columbus was the greatest human being ever alive, and then he discovered America, and that we have this day for him, and we really were excited, and we learned, in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue, and learned all that stuff. Come to find out later in later years that, like, actually, he might not be the person we thought he was. I think the beauty of history is it's being able to look at things in a more informed sense, and not just taking whatever is given to you. So this picture that I have back here, I've been getting a lot of questions and DMs about it. It's Henry David Thoreau, and the Disobey is taken off of the Shepard Fairey work, which is to Obey, the Andre the Giant piece. And then this similar kind of image was used for the for Barack Obama when they did was it Believe?
I am not listening to you.
I forget what the hell the word was on the bottom. The one I'm talking about. Hope. So the idea isn't, often kids will see this in my classroom, like, you just think that we shouldn't do what we're told? We should just be anarchy? We should do whatever we want? It's like, no. It's just not taking whatever's being fed to you all the time. It's looking at it through a critical lens. And no matter who that is or what that is, because we as people don't get to decide the messengers that are bringing the messages into our lives. And so sometimes those people look a little bit sketchy. Sometimes they look the part, but their message is way off. And so it is just becoming as informed as you can so that you can make a decision based on what the facts seem to be at that time. And later, when we find out that people that we heralded, that we thought were amazing, that we thought were the greatest people in the world, and they have this fall from grace. It's like letting that now inform your decision. Or people that we thought were guilty of something or were like heinous people, like why are we heralding them? So like one of the things we talk about with my students, we've talked about in the past is Che Guevara, and how some folks, they know him from the t-shirt, right? Or whatever gear that they're wearing with him on there. But it is, there's some weird bug on my camera. But what do you know about Che Guevara? What do you know about his policies, his views? Like, so I'm not saying don't rep his stuff. I'm not saying like don't wear the gear with the picture on it. I'm not saying that you can't love whoever that individual is, but like, do you have a full idea of who that individual was, or did you just like read a book on it or something like that? So I think absolutely challenge those things with your students, because what we're doing, what we're teaching kids to do is question the books that you're being read, question the opinions of others, not disrespecting it, not just railing against the man, but it's like, why? Like just asking why in a way that you're just trying to grow and be the best human being that you possibly can, with the best informed and making the best informed decisions that you can. That other question that you showed me earlier, it said question 1. I didn't see a question 2. Okay, cool. Annabelle, I just wanted to make sure we weren't skipping something she was asking. What is the process like for creating a new elective class, such as your hip hop class? How do you tie it into state standards and get it set up in the school?
You're over an hour.
Oh, okay. So yeah, we'll do this. For me, it was, so some questions are easy for me to answer and some of them aren't. And this is why. I think that my particular skill set is in taking what kids are interested in and tying that to curriculum. It's just something that comes very easy to me. It's like making jokes. Like I can really make jokes very effortlessly, and I think of things in a different way. In the same way that like a lot of my students can write like rhymes or lyrics or poems, and they come up with these beautiful, beautiful combinations of words that I do not possess that skill set. Or some people can dress really, really well, and you're like, damn, like I don't even know how you came up with the idea. Like I wouldn't even, that outfit wouldn't have stood out to me at all. Or the idea that you wore that hat with the pin, with the jacket, with the scarf, or the handkerchief with the pin, and it's like, damn, the whole thing's good. I think that's one of my gifts, is being able to do that. But I think, to me, it's looking where students are focused. What are they interested in? Is it something that I can be excited about also? Deep diving into that. And then look, when you're learning about it, when I'm reading stacks and stacks of books on the history of hip hop and hip hop culture, it is, am I finding commonalities between this thing that I'm reading about and something that happened in class? And so I'm always looking and watching, and everything I consume is always through the lens of, how can I use this in school? How could I use this to motivate a kid, to inspire a student, to uplift someone, to help someone, to whatever? It's that then. So it's finding what the kids are excited about first, and then it's like making it fit the mold of school instead of the other way around. And so that, I think that's the move. And then I worked with other people in my school. I worked with folks online to help develop the curriculum that went along with that. And that, to me, is the best part, because it's not just through the lens of Reynolds, but it's through the lens of like the community of educators that have helped to craft this curriculum to make it something that is both enjoyable, educational, exciting, engaging, and builds partnerships and communities all over the city of Philadelphia.
Can you say that name? And you can end on that one.
Sure. Jesus Alonso Rico Palicio.
Pretty good.
Bro, I think I just nailed that. Maybe I did. Maybe you're laughing. Maybe you're sitting in your house like, he has no idea.
I bet you Romina would not say that.
No, because so one of my favorite students, she wrote the foreword for my book. Even when she lived, her parents are from Mexico. She was born in the U.S. But when I would order Mexican food often when I worked in Camden, because they had this great spot around the corner where like no one spoke English. I'm hurrying up. I know.
That part of it.
I just like this part of it, because Romina would get so mad that I would call up and I'm like, yeah, can I have polo enchiladas with mole sauce, and she'd be like, Reynolds, that's not how you say it. And then she would roll her R's or her L's. And I'm just like, dude, I can't say it like that because I feel self-conscious. So when she went away to college, to Syracuse University, I would call her and be like, yo, I want to order Mexican food. You need to call it in for me. Because oftentimes stuff would come back wrong also because I didn't know how to say it. And so Ramina, for 4 years, ordered all of my Mexican food from Syracuse University. It was fantastic. Do you recommend your book to Mexican English teachers in Mexico? So I would say this, Jesus. And this, look, I tried to write my book so that it was suitable for everyone, for people that were teaching pre-K or to seniors in high school, for teachers that were paras or co-teachers, for administrators, for tutors. It's, to me, the book is not so much, so there's been some misconceptions around the book, right? Like around like, what does the real rap guide to teaching mean? It has nothing to do with rap. It has everything to do with the fact that my students refer to real rap and they're having real rap with you. It's a real talk. It's a real conversation. We're having an open and honest and vulnerable conversation. And so that was meant to be an homage to my students. That's kind of been questioned. But the book is not about how to teach through hip hop necessarily, although there is a chapter about that. But it's my experiences with that and the way that students have been able to grow and the ways I've been able to facilitate community through that. It's more than anything a way on how to connect with students on a human level, on how to look at your students as people, as how to look beyond yourself for the help that you might need. So like building a community, whether that's small or large, whether it's 2 of you in a school or it's a whole bunch of us online meeting for meeting every Sunday, it is, and then using that to create an expression of care, which is what we are doing as educators for our students, to be able to see our students for who they are and not for what we want them to be, for looking at things for exactly the way that they are and trying to meet the needs of all of our students, no matter what. And so that is what I thought, that was my idea, the reason for me writing the book. And it was something that I felt like, you know, if it was talked about before, I don't read a lot of education books. I haven't in years because I don't have the time. But that's what I felt like it was for. So do I think that it's for them? Yes, I feel like it's for everyone. And it's funny. The first time that I mentioned having cereal parties in my class. So for those of you that don't know, I don't do pizza parties because I feel like every teacher does that. So we just changed it a little bit and we eat cereal. We eat cereal with the least nutritional value as a community in our classroom. And the first DM that I ever got as a response to that was a teacher in Mexico that did that with her class. And she said it was by far the greatest thing and the most memorable moment of the year because you were just people sitting around, eating cereal, having a conversation. And it was like sitting around any other table, right? We as humans communicate through food so much around meal times. And it's just creating those moments that are special, that are funny, that are loving, and doing that together as with our students. And that's how it works. So look, real quick, before everyone goes, the response to the book has been incredible. And I really, really appreciate every single person that has bought the book, that has recommended the book. Going forward, if you want, 2 things I would like to ask of you is, one, if your school is interested in doing a book study over the summer, so a lot of schools will read a book or several books over the summer. I want you to know 2 things. One, I have book study. You have 3 things. One, there's book study materials already. You don't have to prepare anything. If you want to do my book, please contact me and I will put you in touch with my publisher because you can get a discount rate if you order the books at large, so that you don't have to go on Amazon and order 50 to 100 to 500 books and pay that price. There's a discounted offer because you're ordering them in bulk. And 3, if you decide to do that, I do calls for free that follow the book study. So if anyone has any follow-up questions, we talk on a Skype call or a Zoom call for any set amount of time. And that doesn't cost you anything. And it's just because I love being a part of the conversation. And the second thing is, if you have read the book, if you would please go on Amazon and do a review. What it does is it pushes the SEO in such a way that more educators are just going to know about it. And look, to be honest with you, the main reason that I wrote the book was because I just want to put the word out there and I just want to care for kids in such a way and let educators, the same way that we're doing here, to connect with people, to to know that there's someone out there like them doing the work that they want to do, or are doing. So like there's someone that's the same kind of crazy as you in the world that's doing these sorts of things, that we're getting so excited about in the classroom. So you can go right on Amazon, fill out the review, John. And that's great. And I don't care if that's a 1-star, if it's 5-star. I'm not asking for that, although I do prefer the 5 stars. But be honest, speak your truth. In the words of Vivette Davis. That's it, everybody. I hope that you have a great week, and we will be back next week here live from the laundry room. Peace. Hitting all the buttons and making this thing, and so I can eat lunch.